Okay, and we're back. That gluing at least went very smoothly. In case anybody was wondering, it does hurt when you stab yourself with a Herrnhuter Sterne. It actually draws blood if you get yourself really good. So I have now literally bled for this project. Anyway, so I did cheat and I hooked it up to power off camera, and this thing looks so cool powered up. I'm glad I didn't give up on it because holy crap, it looks amazing. But you have to wait to see it. Ha 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 ha. Anyway, so the next step is going to be to gather up all of the other materials that I have here. I don't need 2 of those. And build up the USB connector. Oh, there it is. There we go. Okay. Pardon me as I make fascinating noise. Okay, so the next part of this, I guess I should probably leave the hot glue gun plugged in for the moment. All right, so the next phase is to disassemble the power cable that came with it. Now, I was thinking about using this cable to power it, but I decided that rather than let all of this cable go to waste, because it's quite a long length of wire that they include with these stars, that I'll just use the wire that they gave me with the thing, assuming I can get it unwrapped. There we go. So we'll just liberate that a little bit. We don't need that end just yet, but we do need this end. So we're just gonna, I was gonna say desolder it, but you know what? I'm just gonna crop the wires off, clink, and then untwist them just a little bit, and very, very, very carefully strip these wires. Maybe let's see what happens. I'm gonna strip off a fairly generous portion of the wire. I have to be very careful because it's exceedingly slender wire. They've got like, well, it actually has a bunch of conductors in it, but very slender wire, which means when you're stripping it, you have to be very careful while doing so. That's not going to do me any good. So I need this one. Just get a very light pinch with the strippers. Oh, see, I accidentally liberated some copper with that one, but I should be okay. All right. Now, the next step, and I'm gonna actually, no, I won't use that one. I'll use this. We'll apply some flux to the wires. They feel like they might be copper-coated aluminum, which is kind of a pain to solder sometimes. Solder. Somebody complained that I don't pronounce the L in solder, and I'm like, well, I grew up pronouncing it solder, so you guys can deal with that. There we go. That took the tinning actually quite readily, so maybe they aren't. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tin these wires up a little bit, but fairly close to the hot glue here. This is going to be interesting. If my dialogue gets a little bit rambly, it's actually quite a bit past my bedtime at this point. This project has lasted much longer than I ever intended it to. But, you know, that's the way it works. Then I'm gonna take this tinned wire and sort of how thorough do I want to be here? Yeah, I want to do this. So we're gonna crop off a little bit of heat shrink here, just like so, and like so, and Actually, I already have a piece of that, so that'll work lovely. Yeah, perfect. Okay. And then I'm going to first, we're going to put the big heat shrink over top there. Make sure that it's not too long, which it is, so I'm going to crop it down a little bit. Ow! Sorry, that was probably really loud in the microphone. I apologize for any headphone users. That was probably not particularly pleasant. We're going to trim these down a little bit too, because I made them too long. Thankfully, this particular heat shrink tubing is not particularly expensive, so I don't have to worry about wasting it. Why did I feel like one of the spikes was loose? Wouldn't surprise me, given how many times I've stabbed myself on the thing. So what I want to do, and this is going to seem a little counterintuitive, but I'm going to take... actually going to crop these down a little bit. This is one of those things that I've thought through how I want to do it, but when it comes down to it, I'm still not entirely too sure how I want to accomplish it. And then I'm going to crop this lead short and this lead just a tiny bit longer, because I still need to differentiate polarity on this. So we're going to make that one just a little tiny bit longer. And then I'm going to grab my soldering iron here. Dab that on. Being exceedingly careful, I really do not want to melt any of these spikes with the soldering iron. There we go. Alright. Now the heat from the soldering iron actually melted the hot glue just a little bit there. So we need to now figure out which of these is negative and which of them is positive. So I'm going to grab a good old Sharpie here and my multimeter, which is right here. I'm going to grab my other leads, which are right there. I like these new leads. I need to buy another set of them. Like so. And then we're going to bring that over to continuity mode. And let's see. We want the negative side because it's a black marker, so we'll do that. And then we'll figure out which of these wires is the negative. And then we're going to take my... That's not a Sharpie, this is a Sharpie. We're going to take the Sharpie and mark up the wire with a nice splodge of black there. And that way we know that that's the negative wire. That will be important shortly when we solder together the oops. Oh, I'm throwing all sorts of things on the floor here. When we solder together the USB cable there. One of these days I'll actually finish my sentence. Okay, next, bugger. I did the one thing that you're always not supposed to do. I forgot. I got way ahead of myself and forgot to put the heat shrink on. So I need to keep track of which of these is which now. Like so. Keeping them separated. I'm gonna double check the continuity when I'm done anyway, but if I do this correctly, I won't need to. Okay, so re-tag these on. Almost tagged one of the spikes with the soldering iron there. Actually, I did get a little bit. Oh well. Okay, I'm gonna double check that continuity just to make sure that I didn't get them screwed up again. So we'll do that, and this should be the negative lead. It is the negative lead. Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I really want to finish this up in this video. I don't want to do a third in this series. So we're gonna bring those heat shrinks down over the wires. Now reach over here and grab the heat gun. Shrink it down. I'm actually gonna squeeze those down into the melting heat or hot glue there. I'm gonna squeeze these leads together just a little bit, and then I have to hold it for a moment while the hot glue sets again. It's kind of a sort of a handy thing in one way, but not so handy in another way, that the hot glue is reacting to the soldering iron and the heat gun there. So we're going to squeeze these together again. Push this down. Actually push it onto the hot glue a little bit. And then we'll shrink that in. Just like so. Just to give a little bit more structural integrity to that connection. We'll make sure that adhesive that's inside that heat shrink is nice and set, and then we'll socket this down onto its little position there. It's the added advantage of that process having caused the hot glue to overflow a little bit, so that's going to make a nice strong connection for that to hang off of when it's hanging. So that's beautiful there. Now I need a small screwdriver. I'm just going to cheat and use my spudger here. And just unscrew these connectors that came with. Okay, unscrew that one. There we go. Alright, and now it's time to solder on the USB connector. Now, this USB connector didn't actually come with a housing, which I found a little interesting. Let's see, which way does this go in? I think it goes in... judging by that little bit, I think it's supposed to go in like this. Yes, it goes in like that. All right. I'm going to squeeze that back out. So my next step, Spudger, is to figure out how I want to do the USB cable here. I know for sure I'm going to want some heat shrink on the bottom there, so we're going to put the medium heat shrink on. And then I think for the wires, I'm going to want a little section of this for structural reasons. So we're going to take that and run it up. And then I did this in the wrong order. So we're going to start with the big piece of heat shrink, which is basically going to act as the USB housing. Then the medium piece of heat shrink, which is going to act as a strain relief. And then a little bit of heat shrink, which is going to act as a point for this crimp to grab onto. So now we just have to refresh our memories on USB cables. I've got my little cheat sheet here. So the ground is going to go to this far one here, and the plus 5 volts is going to be the opposite side. So I'm going to dab some rosin, or some flux, those terms are interchangeable, into the channel of the connector here. Ooh, that was probably a little too much. Oh well. And then I'm going to dab a little bit of solder into that channel. There we go. Boop. And boop. There we go. Let's see, which did I say was the common? That's this side here. So we'll dab that on. There we go. And we'll dab this one on. Maybe. There we go. Beauteous, beauteous. Alright. And then that is going to slide. Oh, I see why it was giving me trouble. Where's that X-Acto knife that I was using? Ah, there it is. Got a little piece of flash from the mold there. There we go. That's going to slide in right up to the top there and stop. Excellent. And this is where that thin piece of heat shrink is going to come into play. So we'll just... I probably should have shrunk that on before I pushed the connector in, but whatever. So we'll shrink that down. Like so. That's basically just adding a little bit more thickness to those wires, so that when I put this top clamp on, it'll actually maybe grab onto something, hopefully. So that's going to clip in like that. Well, I'll just keep going. We'll see what happens. This is, as I've said multiple times, the rough draft of this project, so if this connector fails, they're not particularly expensive, so I can just buy a new one. There we go. Oh, I don't have a proper crimping tool. They are shockingly expensive. We're just going to bring that up over top of that end there. We're going to shrink that one down, and I really hope the polarity is correct. But I'm at a point where the connector has to be attached in order for me to test the polarity, so I'm kind of past the point of no return. So there's that. Put that back over there. In case anyone is wondering, what I'm using is ostensibly a Yihua 995D soldering rework station. Unfortunately, I discovered very early on that it is a knockoff. It's not actually a Yihua product, which I was quite disappointed about. So then I've got this larger piece of heat shrink here, which by sheer dumb luck it would seem, because I actually had to stretch it for it to fit over the USB cable, or the USB connector. Looks like I shrunk it just the exact amount that I needed to, or stretched it just the exact amount I needed to. And we're going to get the heat gun out one last time. Startle my cat. She just bolted. I pointed the heat gun at her. She didn't appreciate that, apparently. And just shrink this down over top of everything else to there. And that shrunk right down onto that medium heat shrink, which is shrunk right down onto the everything else. So we've got a nice solid strain relief there with the epoxy core, or the dual layer heat shrink tubing there. And then, just to be super thorough, and because I've still got it plugged in, I'm going to dab a little blob of hot glue right there. Like so. There we go. I knew I kept the heat gun, or the hot glue gun on for a reason. So there we go. There's the USB connector built. And we just gotta sit here and wait for a moment while the hot glue does its thing and sets or hardens, or whatever the appropriate term is. Let me know in the comments below what you think the appropriate term for hot glue resuming its solid state is. I'm assuming hardens would be appropriate. Cools, perhaps. Sets would also work. Curious what everybody else thinks. Okay. It's not fully hardened or set or whatever, it's whatever we're going to decide what it's going to be, but I'm really eager to plug this in and see if it's working. I hope it doesn't burst into flame or emit sparks or explode or any of those fantastic things that might happen upon plugging it in. Please work, please work, please work. Oh, Beautimus, it's working. Alright, so what I'm going to do for you guys here is I'm going to reach up here and turn my workbench lights off so you can see this a little better. And my iPad battery is about to die, so hopefully we'll be able to give you a bit of a preview of how that work looks. I'm trying to lower the brightness here so that there we go. You can actually kind of see what it looks like here. Oh, there we go. That's how I do that. So we'll just let that run for a few moments so you can see what it looks like as the lights begin to go out of sync. It starts to shift in colors all around the different points. I'm really glad I didn't give up on this project because of just how amazing it looks now that it's done. Yeah, so there you have it. A LED color changing Herrnhuter Star. I'm going to buy another one or two of these stars and refine my technique and do a follow-up video on how to do it once I've figured out a more, well, a less painful way of doing it, both mentally and physically, because I drew blood tonight with it. But there you have it. Ask me any questions you have in the comments below. There'll be a link to subscribe there, a video you'll find interesting here, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for coming. Bye.